Sometime in June 2017, the then president of the Nigerian Senate, Senator Bukola Saraki, raised a serious alarm. At the time, Nigeria had about 10.5 million out-of-school children. In his words, the situation was alarming and a ticking time bomb. Fast forward to 2022, 5 years after Saraki raised that alarm, the number doubled to 20 million. Apparently, nothing or very little was done about the situation, so it became twice as bad. 2 years later, that is in 2024, by some stroke of luck, the number dipped slightly and currently stands at 18.3 million. Let me rephrase in case you didn't get what I just said. Nigeria currently has 18.3 million children who are not enrolled in school. This figure, just like before, was released by the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, in early May 2024. According to UNICEF, this figure positions Nigeria as the country with the highest number of out-of-school children globally. To put that in perspective, Nigeria is a country of about 218 million people. If we go by Statista's age structure analysis for Nigeria in 2022, there are roughly 43% of children aged between 1 and 14 in the country. This means that Nigeria has an estimated 93.7 million children, out of which 18.3 million are not in school. This is higher than India, China, Pakistan, and other countries with proportionately large populations. UNICEF says that at least 1 in 3 Nigerian children is out of school, and 1 in every 5 of the world's out-of-school children is in Nigeria. This is a serious problem because these kids have no form of modern social investment in their lives and could be easy candidates for criminal activities tomorrow. In southern Nigeria, the majority of out-of-school children hawk items in traffic or beg for money by the roadside. But the vast majority of these children are concentrated in the northeastern and northwestern regions of Nigeria. In these areas, these kids are commonly known as almajiris, a Hausa version of the Arabic word muhajir, which is a name given to anyone who is dedicated solely to Islamic education. However, this practice has long been bastardized in Nigeria's predominantly Islamic north, and most of these young ones only roam the streets every day begging for alms. In fact, the name almajiri is loosely synonymous with a Hausa or Fulani beggar in many parts of Nigeria. But this situation is even more confusing because primary education is officially free and compulsory in Nigeria. So, what is the cause or are the causes of the growing number of out-of-school children in Nigeria? What are the dangers ahead if this ugly crisis is not addressed immediately and decisively in Nigeria? Is basic education too expensive for the Nigerian government, or is it unattractive to Nigerian parents? Who is to be held responsible for such failure? The government, the parents, or the society? In this video, we'll answer these questions one after another. Welcome once again to Africana Historica. This channel is dedicated to unraveling the complexities of our rich African history and exploring our culture, politics, growth, innovation, and legacy. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button to stay updated on insightful African documentaries like this one, and click the notification bell so you'll be one of the first to know when we create new content like this. Today, the figures of out-of-school children in Nigeria are scarier when you look at them closely. As of January 2024, at the top of the list is the northwestern region, followed by the northeast and southwest, respectively. Of the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria, the southeast and south-south regions have the lowest numbers. This data looks at only 10.2 million children who by their ages are supposed to be at the primary school level. Also, when you look at the distribution of out-of-school children in Nigeria by tribe, the Hausas and Fulanis, which are the dominant ethnic groups in the north, come out at the top again with the highest numbers. As Senator Bukola Saraki said in his 2017 alarm, these children would most likely grow to become the problem of tomorrow's society, or at least a burden to Nigeria's lean social resources if nothing is done. In today's world, a grown-up person without any form of modern education will find it harder to fit in and survive compared to another person who has some form of education or training. Besides, studies have shown that downward educational pathways are predictive of increases in crime rates, whereas upward pathways are associated with decreased crime rates in society. So, it's safe to say that Nigeria is indeed sitting on a ticking time bomb, and this bomb might go off at any time in the near future. Nigeria is already battling with an all-time high insecurity issue. Banditry is rife in many parts of the country, kidnapping for ransom is happening in broad daylight, and the Boko Haram extremist group is still present and active in northern Nigeria. Now, the big question is, why are the figures so high? According to UNICEF, the education deprivation in northern Nigeria is driven by various factors, including economic barriers and socio-cultural norms and practices that discourage attendance in formal education, especially for girls. In this documentary, we'll focus mostly on the northern part of Nigeria because the problem is more pronounced there. The larger proportion of children in northern Nigeria come from Muslim families and often receive Quranic education, which does not include basic skills such as literacy and numeracy. Because of the strong leaning toward Islamic faith in this region, Western education is seen by many as secondary to Islamic education. Another reason is the high poverty rate in northern Nigeria. In 2022, the federal government of Nigeria, through the National Bureau of Statistics, released the results of the 2022 Multidimensional Poverty Index (MPI) survey. The survey showed that 65% of the poor, which is 86 million people, live in the north, while 35%, or nearly 47 million poor people, live in the south. The northwest state of Sokoto alone has a multidimensional poverty index of 91%. The poverty rate in the northeast and northwest zones of Nigeria is 77.7% and 76.3% respectively, and 67.5% in the north-central zone. The majority of the northern people in Nigeria are subsistent farmers with traditional skills. So, because of the high poverty rates in northern Nigeria, many families appear to prioritize basic necessities over investing in their children's education. Of course, the lack of education also perpetuates the cycle of poverty. Number 3 on the list of issues bedeviling basic education in Nigeria is the extremely poor level of basic education infrastructure in the country. The education sector in Nigeria as a whole is underfunded when compared to global standards. This goes from primary education all the up to universities. Researchers at the university level often have to fund their projects without government support. Nigeria spends 1.2% of its GDP on education, which is far lower than other African countries, and notably lower than the international benchmark of 4 to 6%. So besides the lack of basic resources, such as books, libraries, and the like, there are not enough classrooms and trained teachers to address the decaying primary education infrastructure in northern Nigeria. On the contrary, other sectors of the economy receive far more allocation in the 2024 expenditure budget. The provision for universal basic education is 251.47 billion naira, which is a mere 0.91% of the 27.5 trillion naira adjusted budget for 2024. Even in the multiple supplementary budgets approved for the 2024 fiscal year, priority was placed on the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road Project, the Sokoto-Badagry Road, and supporting the implementation of the new minimum wage for workers. No one remembered education, not even at the most basic level. Some reports from across the country say that many classrooms don't have chairs and desks, while some classrooms have up to 100 students per teacher. Then you talk about the poor power supply in Nigeria and the lack of portable clean water and sanitation facilities in primary schools. All of these make it difficult to provide a conducive learning environment for kids and negatively impact the enrollment rate. To put it simply, Basic education in the country, especially in northern Nigeria, is not getting the right amount of attention, and the future of the country's young ones is being jeopardized. If you've watched this documentary this far, thank you for sticking around. Before you continue, do leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell if you'd like to see more deep dives like this. Now, let's continue. Although former President Goodluck Jonathan built Almajiri schools across the north, the idea was poorly implemented and the project failed. The new school system built by Goodluck Jonathan spanned several northeastern and northwestern states and was supposed to introduce Western education to the Almajiri education system, which focuses only on Quranic studies. However, the major problem was that these Almajiris were nomadic in nature. Plus, there was an obvious lack of will to enforce and manage the Goodluck Jonathan Almajiri school system by northern governors. In fact, most of northern Nigeria's governors have been accused of deliberately sabotaging primary and secondary education in their states. A major narrative we see in mainstream media is that these kids prefer to sit in front of Islamic clerics and scholars under the trees rather than opt for Western education that actually makes them more useful to society. But the question is, how does memorizing the Quran make you an engineer, a nurse, an artisan, or a trader, or equip you with any skill that will make you relevant to the society we live in today? The fourth and most daunting of all the challenges affecting education in the north is the persistent issue of insurgency. The Boko Haram terrorists were notorious for abducting 276 secondary school girls in Nigeria's northeastern state of Borno in 2014. And guess what? 10 years after that event, not all the girls have been accounted for. Neither can the government of the country assure citizens across the country of safety as they go about their daily businesses. Even farmers are afraid to go farm as bandits and terrorists run wild. This security issue is a leading contributor to the decline in school attendance in Nigeria's north. Honestly, no parents will be at peace sending their kids to school every day when there is no guarantee of their safe return back home. Finally, there is also the issue of incompetent teachers. In June 2024, while at a conference organized by the Sir Ahmadu Bello Memorial Foundation, the chairman of the board of trustees of the organization, Babangida Aliyu, said that 50% of teachers in the north are not qualified. If you investigate the claim, you'll see that the majority of people teaching in northern Nigeria are doing so because they lack better opportunities. But the same can be said of teachers in the south of the country. The minimum qualification required to be a teacher in Nigeria is the Nigerian Certificate in Education, NCE, and about 50% of teachers in the northern state of Nigeria do not have this qualification. According to official reports, insufficient training, low salaries, and lack of incentives all contribute to the low motivation of teachers in Nigeria. Just as its former president Goodluck Jonathan said, there can never be a functional society without a functional education system. But as fundamental as this need is to any society, it appears not to be a priority for the recent past and current Nigerian governments. Since the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration took over, 4 different budgets have been implemented concurrently by the administration. The National Assembly of Nigeria, in December 2023, extended the implementation period of the capital component of its budget for 2023 from December 31st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. At the request of the president, it passed a 2.17 trillion naira 2023 supplementary budget in November 2023. That budget's lifespan has also been extended to March 31st, 2024. The 2 budgets from 2023 have further been extended from March 31st, 2024 to June 30th, 2024. There is also the 2024 fiscal budget of 27.5 trillion naira. The Tinubu administration also got the National Assembly to, once again, approve a 2024 supplementary budget of 6.2 trillion naira. Where am I going with all of these? If you look at the details of the budgets, basic education is taking a significantly inconsequential backseat. The only major recent stride in Nigeria's education is the introduction of student loans for tertiary education in the 2024 budget. If Nigeria continues to treat basic education in this way, it is indeed sitting on a ticking time bomb. Over 133 million people live in multidimensional poverty in Nigeria, and considering that the figures are higher in northern Nigeria, it's easy to begin to see the direct correlation between the growing number of out-of-school children and poverty. With that level of poverty, people are willing to do anything to make a living, including getting involved in kidnapping, drugs, and other crimes, which in turn becomes a burden to society. Thanks to organizations like UNICEF, which has rolled out some initiatives to support children in Nigeria so they can attend school and learn. But for a country where basic education is officially free and compulsory, there must be aggressive efforts to enforce primary education across the country, encourage parents to send their kids to school, train and incentivize teachers, and prosecute those who subject children to child labor. We've come to the end of today's documentary. Thank you for sticking through to the end. If you enjoy what we do, please leave a like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. We're focused on giving you insightful updates on unfolding events across Africa and unraveling facts hidden in African history. Click on the links on the screen to check out other documentaries on the channel. We'll see you over there.